So I just finished filming and uploading last Friday's vlog where I said I am going to talk in my next vlog about my process for how I avoid the self-editing paradox. And what I mean by that is that thing where you're writing a book and you get to a certain point and you realize all of the problems, all of the things you need to change to make it better, and you know what to do. Maybe in some cases you're not sure what to do, but you know there's stuff that needs fixing. And you feel like even though you know you need to finish a draft, you just can't go on in the draft until you go back and make things right in the beginning. This is a trap I have fallen into and a lot of writers fall into, because of course what happens is you go back and you rewrite it from the beginning, and then you hit that point again and you're like, oh no, this needs to be fixed too, and that, and then you go back and revise some more, and then that causes a domino effect of other changes, and then you hit that point again and you're like, no, there's still more. You see what I'm saying? You get caught in a loop in this first chunk of your story and you never break out into the rest of the draft. And you have to at some point. I'm not gonna say never go back and rework some things. Sometimes it's fine and you can move on. But the thing is, everything you write after that, everything you write until the end of the novel, you're gonna discover things, you're gonna learn things about your characters, about your plot, that you can't brainstorm your way into. You have to write it out, and it's gonna affect the beginning all over again. You see what I mean? Like, I know people like to use the words discovery writing for pantsing. Like that's what writing without plot is discovery writing, and I love that. But I'm gonna go ahead and say that even if you plot, even if you outline, you're still discovery writing, because a first draft is always going to reveal so many things to you from beginning to end, and you can't learn the things that happen in this second half of your story if you're just constantly reworking the first over and over and over again. Okay, so my issues right now with Nil are that I suspect there are some elements in the story, specifically world building things, that I might not need. I'm just gonna keep writing and keep including them until I figure out whether or not they actually are meaningful and important and integral to the story or not. There is one particular setup scene I wrote in the first act that I am wondering if it's actually a fun and games scene. I don't know if it's quite the sort of catalyst that I thought it was, and it might be better placed later in the book. And mostly my biggest issue is that I feel like the first draft of Act 1 right now is a bit too crammed with stuff, and some things are muddy to me and to the main character, and I need to go back and really focus on her, because something that's been working really well for me right now in this book is the world building. I've talked about this a lot. This is a world in a book I have written over and over again for the last decade, and I know the world really well, but what I need to really sharpen right now is my main character and the plot, and they are honestly at this point one and the same, because this plot is, to me, when I think of the premise, it is very character driven. Like when I think of how would I explain the very core conflict of this book, I can do it in 5 words, and it would basically be the tagline. It's very crystal clear to me, so I need to make sure that that's clear throughout Act 1 and that it's not getting buried under a bunch of other stuff. And so something I like to do at this stage, like I've just finished Act 1, okay, great. I have some beats thought out for the fun and games for Act 2, but it's not completely outlined at all. I'm not even close. Something I like to do at this point is reread or read a new writing craft book. And honestly, usually it doesn't even matter which one. I have been using Save the Cat for a while, just like the last couple books I've written. I don't know, it's just kind of my thing at the moment. I love Save the Cat. I think it's a really great structure, but I think staring at those beats over and over again, I think it's given me all the insight it's going to give me right now. And, you know, reading about structure in another way, especially character-driven structure, maybe is going to give me another perspective and give me some ideas. And so what I decided to do is, I honestly don't remember if I've read this or not. I know I've read Superstructure by James Scott Bell. I don't know if I've read Write Your Novel from the Middle. I know that he talks a lot about his midpoint in Superstructure, so I'm going to be reading, I'm sure, a lot of the same thoughts. But I love this idea because the gist of it is that you look at the midpoint of any story and you will see this moment where a character, metaphorically, or I guess maybe sometimes literally, looks in the mirror and realizes that he or she or they have to change or die. Die maybe physically, or maybe, you know, emotionally, or maybe professionally, depending on the type of story. And I really love that idea. And I think this is what's going to be the most helpful for me right now, because the next act that I write is going to be the fun and games section, the first half of Act 2 up to that midpoint moment. And I know what my midpoint scene is. Like, I know the setting of it, I know the goal that Nil has and what's going to bring her here, and there's a twist there, and I know that. And I have an idea of what the mirror moment is, but if I'm honest, it's not as clear as I would like it to be. And I feel like if I can really, I know Nil well enough by now at this point in the process, having written almost 20,000 words of this book, that I can take a little break from drafting and spend a few days just pondering the questions that will be raised in this book and brainstorming a little bit more about where I want my character to be in the middle of the novel and what changes she is going to have to make to herself to get there, and then kind of reverse engineer the beats of the fun and games section and figure out how I'm going to get her there. In the process, I think this is also going to give me a lot of clarity on Act 1 and what changes I'm going to need to eventually make. So that's step 1, reading a craft book. All right, step 2. So it's the next day, it is Friday, and after reading through that book, I pretty much honed on like the main point of the book, which is this triangle that he provides, and he says you can start developing your story and your character arc from any point on this triangle. So at the top of the triangle is the mirror moment, the moment where the character looks deep inside and realizes things need to change within himself if he is going to be, if he's going to triumph. The left point of the triangle is the pre-story psychology. What made him this way? Like how is he at the start of the story? Where is his mental state? And how does that lead to the mirror moment? What is his moral flaw that needs to change? And then the right point on the triangle is the transformation at the end. Reading this was really, I'm glad I read it because it's so similar to what I talk about in one of my Skillshare courses, the character transformation. It just always helps to hear other writers talk about the same topics but their own perspective on it, and I really like Bell's triangle here. I love the idea of just take this, your mirror moment, your pre-story psychology, and your transformation at the end. Pick one. Which one do you see most clearly? And then ask yourself a series of questions to work out the other 2 points and to get a full idea of your character's arc. So I spent a little time on my whiteboard. Sometimes I just feel like I need to stand up and move around, and I like I like working on the whiteboard. So that helped. I have a good idea of, I know what her main moral flaws are. She is, for very good reason, Nil is incapable of trusting literally anyone. And obviously, to triumph at the end, she is going to have to put her trust in others. And that's going to be very difficult for her to do. And the middle point of the story, part of the revelation she's going to have there is she's not going to be on her way to accepting that she has to trust others, but she's going to, a certain thing happens that essentially forces her. Like, there is no way forward at all for her without trusting the very important B story characters that are in her life at this point. What else? And another kind of flaw of Nil's, I wouldn't call this a moral flaw so much, more of a thing she believes about herself because of society and because of her childhood and her upbringing. She's always wanted to just kind of be no one. She wants to be off the radar. She doesn't want people paying attention to her, and she feels this is best. And at the start of the story, because of her circumstances, she kind of quite literally is no one, hence the name Nil. But of course she has a background and a name and a backstory, and as much as she's trying to suppress it, the midpoint of the story is going to be her being confronted with that and realizing that she can't run away from who she is, and much more importantly, she shouldn't be afraid to show the world who she is, if that makes sense. And so the transformation at the end is obviously, going to be her not being no one anymore, very much being someone, and not being afraid to let the world know. I know I'm being really vague here. It's because I don't want to give, I'm still trying to find that balance of how much of this story do I actually want to give away in the vlog, but I think hopefully you see where I'm going here. Like, that's how my triangle is working now, and that only took like 15 minutes maybe, and it's all very vague. You'll notice I didn't say anything about any kind of specific plot points, but I think what my next step is going to be is that from the beginning of working on this story, I have had the setting and the conflict, or like the objective, the goal of the midpoint scene very specifically in mind. And now it's just a matter of taking a look at it again with these specific ideas about Nil and her mirror moment, this moment of self-reflection, and how that's going to tie into the external plot. And it might take reworking what I thought that scene was going to be, but I do think I can make it work. So that's going to be the next step. Hello, it is now Monday, and I have not done a single thing on this book since the last time I picked up this camera, and that is okay. So my next step, and I will be honest, I don't know if I'm going to get around to do this today, because today is just turning into one of those days where work and also other not work tasks are kind of piling up, and I'm playing catch up on some stuff. But what I'm going to do, if not today, then definitely tomorrow, is go through on my Save the Cat software, which, as you guys know, I am enjoying right now, and I'm going to go to my Act 1 beats laid out in note cards, and I'm going to re-summarize what I know these scenes need to look like now on the note cards. And I'm also going to use the feature where you can note what the conflict of the scene is and note what the character's emotional change in the scene is, because I don't know, I just like that feature, and it keeps me kind of on track, making sure that every scene in the story has a point and it moves forward in some way. And that's it. That's how I let go of the whole I need to go back and edit thing and move forward with the draft. The next thing I'm going to do after that is do some brainstorming on the scenes I want in Act 2. I love Act 2. I know I've talked in the past about how sometimes I struggle with fun and games, but I still really like it, even though it's hard for me. One of the things, I think one of my favorite, or like one of my biggest aha moments the very first time I read Save the Cat years ago was that phrase, the promise of the premise, which just made me realize, oh, this is the part of the story where if you were to make a movie trailer, you would be seeing a lot of this. Like, this is why people bought the ticket. This is why people picked up the book, And that just means I'm going to get into all the full glory of the time travel-y multiverse fun that I have set up for myself in Act 1, and I'm really looking forward to it. So that's what works for me. Of course, you could do this in Scrivener, you could do this on a whiteboard, you could do this on note cards, you could just open a Word document and list scene 1, now this is what happens. Scene 2, this is what happens. If this works for you, awesome. I had 2 comments on last week's video where I mentioned that I was going to talk about this. Okay, editing Michelle had to jump in here because there are actually 3 comments with like such different approaches that are so fantastic, and I really feel like I just need to give them all a little bit of space in this vlog because these are fantastic. Okay, so first up was Sanja, who said, I have a collection in my writing bullet journal that is named Fix It Later. Love this. I do the same. I also make notes in the notes section of my Scrivener document what I want to change and how, and I keep writing the draft like I already did the changes. Works well for me. Yes, so that's like essentially what I do here. Okay, next up is this really interesting approach from Savannah, who says, my solution to the what to do if you really want to go back and fix it instead of finishing it problem is to be a monster. So I am a monster who writes her first draft or 0 draft out of order. And when I throw continuity out like that, I can get all the ideas out and then piece together what works into a real draft and throw away what doesn't. My favorite parts to draft first are the midpoint, climax, and the closing scene, then puzzle out how the pieces wound up there. Not all of us can be monsters though, and I do not recommend this process to the faint of heart. I have to tell you, and I said this I think in my response, this is really tempting. I mean, I've definitely heard of people writing their books out of order, and I think I even commented here that, I hope I'm getting this right, I think I read that Erin Morgenstern, who wrote The Night Circus over a series of years, I think over a series of nanos, and it was like more like a sort of loosely jointed series of vignettes all set at this circus, and it took a lot of revising and reworking to like turn it into a novel with a specific arc, right? And that has always sounded incredibly fun to me. It is not for the faint of heart, at least for me. I feel like it would take some bravery for me to do this, but this is an amazing solution to the go back and fix it later thing. Jump ahead, write the scenes that you see, and once you write them, maybe you will know how your characters got there, if that makes sense. So Savannah, love this. And then the last comment, the 3rd comment, came from Jennifer. As far as starting a draft over, I have to when I know something is fundamentally not working. If it's a small issue, I just make a note and keep going, but if it's structural, I skip ahead to the next scene I know, write that out with a note about the climax, and I write the end. The draft feels done and I can start over without worrying that I will never finish the book. This is like the mirror image of what I do, and I love this. This is the first time I've ever heard of anybody doing this. Like you basically just like, yeah, you fake yourself out. Like, yeah, I got to the end. The draft is done. I got the whole story out. I mean, I think that's kind of amazing. All 3 of these are amazing approaches and I love it, and I encourage you to try to find whatever one works for you. I get a little, I get worried first of all that the advice I share on my vlogs, or just even just sharing my process, I don't want anyone who's watching this, especially if you're not commenting, because then I'm not interacting with you about your process and what you're doing right now. I don't want you to ever think like this is the way she does it, so this is the way, you know, it would be 100% bad all the time to go back and self-edit, for example. No, that's not true. I've done it myself. A couple years ago, I wrote a book. I got exactly halfway through the draft, realized I needed massive changes. I went back and rewrote it from the beginning, and yes, I did finish the entire draft. Sometimes you gotta do it, okay? Every writer is different. Every writer's process is different. Find what works for you. I enjoy watching other writers share their process because sometimes it gives me ideas, things I can try to improve my own process. Other times I see what they do and I'm like, wow, I could never do that, but it's awesome that it works for them. So take it all with a grain of salt. But that's how I handle not personally falling into the trap where I'm just editing the same handful of scenes over and over again and I'm never making progress with the draft, because I have also fallen down that pit of despair just so many times. I mean, I should go through and count how many unfinished drafts are languishing in folders on my desktop. It's sad, because at some point I had true excitement about every single one of those books. And at some point you just kind of lose the fire, you know? And for me, that happens when I get caught in that loop. So if you feel yourself falling into that trap, maybe this will help you. I hope it does. At any rate, that is gonna be it for this vlog. I will be vlogging my flow state day on Wednesday, where I'm going to be jumping back into the first draft of Nil versus the Pocket universe and having fun, because I know I said this, I think all through NaNoWriMo or Camp Nano or whatever, and I'll keep saying it because it's still true. My #1 goal for this is just to have fun writing it, because I love this premise and I love these characters and I love this world. And yeah, that's it. That's my primary goal. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. Please update me on how all of your projects, all the things are going in the comments below. And I will see you guys Friday with another vlog. Bye.